excited to have today's guest. I'm thrilled to have you, Anila Ali. I'm going to go ahead and introduce you so people know a little bit more about you. Anila is a public school teacher, but more than that, she's also a philanthropist, an author, and a women's rights advocate. A centrist Democrat, Anila served as a Clinton and Obama delegate to the 2012 and 2016 Democratic National Conventions, respectively. She co founded the Irvine Pakistani Parents Foundation and the CalPAC Educational Services, which build schools for at risk girls in rural areas of Pakistan. And more than that, she's also the founder of the American Muslim Multifaith Empowerment Women's Empowerment Council. She's going to
You
tell us
got it.
all about their work. I'm so thrilled to have you. What's so cool is that the organization that you founded and chair has the word empowerment in it. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. We're talking about how to empower women's voices. So let's let's start. I'd love for people to know more about you. So tell me just a brief, biography and how you got to where you are today.
Well, that's going to take a few hours, but thank you so much for having me, Paula. But, today's world, I think, is so important that we as women, as global women, as global leaders, unite because there are so many other women around the world who watch us and learn from us. And so, even though, yes, it's a mouthful and we talk about empowerment and it's sort of Muslim and multi-faith women, but I think it's so important to build women leaders, to show that, yes, women can do everything that they desire to do, that they wish to do. A lot of times, myself, I've had to think, oh my gosh, my kids come first. And people have said, oh, so what do you do with your kids? And what do you do with your family and your husband and your mother? I mean, there are so many issues that we as women have to fight. We have to make sure that we keep the balance between our family and our work life. We keep the husband happy. We keep the parents happy. We keep the kids happy. And at the same time, we have to, you know, um, make ourselves also empowered and have a career that we want. I find that women neglect themselves. They forget about themselves. And we get so engrossed in our families, in keeping everything in order in our homes. Even though I was a career person, I was always a teacher. Um, a lot of times I felt that I put my needs as a woman, I put them at the end of the list. And I only learned that as I grew older, and I learned from other women leaders. And they said, no, Neela, you have to put yourself on the top of the list, because if you don't take care of your mental health and your physical health, you won't be able to keep the family happy and healthy. And I also saw from my own mother. Now, if you look at my family's background, you'd think my father was the patriarch, and he was the male leader of the family. He was born in India. My grandmother also born in India. But the truth was that I grew up in a family where my grandmother was the leader of the family. She was the matriarch. Everybody listened to her. And sure enough, she proved to the world that you can have, she had 14 children. And then she had a career. She was a women's rights leader in India. And, she wrote 14 books on Islam. And so when Pakistan was born in 1947, I was born into a very different Pakistan and into a very different household where my grandmother was the leader. And my mother, even though she was a diplomat's wife, I saw her role being, she was very calming. She had a very calming effect. She was also a teacher, but then with my father's work life, she became this very powerful, quiet, but very powerful woman who is making sure everything is there for the entire family. And it's only when she passed away, all of us realized how she had kept everything together. My father's career, my the siblings, even my grandmother and her sisters-in-law depended on my mother. And my mother was a housewife by that time. So I realized women can do a lot, whether they are at home, whether they are outside working like I do, they have the power to build people and to empower others. I think in a very quiet way, my mother empowered me. And in her last few years, I remember that she would say, Anila, you're better than that. Do something. And she would just say that. And don't neglect your kids in the process of it. And my father would give me different advice. He'd say, go, make sure your voice is heard. And my mother would say, no, make sure you do it in a very balanced way, so you don't neglect yourself and you realize your potential. So I think women have such an incredible role to play. And a lot of times, like South Asian women, women who are from my background, Muslim women especially, um, people they have misconceptions about how important a role we play in households, and we also underestimate ourselves. So my whole endeavor in America is to make sure that every Muslim woman or woman from any community realizes that we can together change the world. Well, we're not going to completely change the world, but we'll make it better if we unite. And, with this election of the first ever South Asian vice president of the United States, it's changed the way people look at South Asian Muslim women, South Asian women especially. And we've got to like cash in on this.
I love that. What I heard from you, which I love, is that you spoke about yourself, your mom, your grandmother, and it sounds like you each have a slightly different leadership style and a slightly different way of approaching the world, or had in this case. And I want to hear more about your style, like your leadership style, and how you have put yourself out there, and maybe how that's changed over the past decade, 2 decades, or maybe even the past year. What have you taken from them and made your own?
Yeah, you're right. My leadership style has changed. At first, I used to get reactionary, and I would say, no, there would be moments when I walk into a meeting, and I'm this women's rights first Muslim American women's rights organization head, and then I walk into this meeting, and there are a couple of men saying, oh, you can sit over there, and I would really get mad. And then I would sort of not know how to respond. But I learned over the years, as this happened to me more and more, I learned to be very politely assertive. And that was, no, I'd like to sit here. Hello, everybody. That's what I would do when I would be asked to, oh, you could sit there with the women. And I said, no, I want a seat at the table, and you're going to give it to me because that's my right as a citizen, right as a Muslim, to be a part of the conversation. And as a leader, I want equal opportunity, I want a seat at the table. So I think my style changed as I encountered discrimination. I also felt, oh, there were places where I could have been more assertive. I mean, those are some of my regrets. I should have said this, I should have said that.
Mm.
But sometimes not saying something also helps, and you just have to realize that you have to be soft and assertive, and that is what I've learned over the years. The one thing I say to all women is we must give everything. Like, we're angry at something, we've been discriminated, we must give it 24 hours and then react. And then we are much more responsible, and we've given it a bit of a thought. We've calmed down, so we're not so reactionary. We actually, we know how to respond. So that's one thing I have definitely learned. So now, if something like that ever happens, to say that it doesn't happen. Like, I go places and they'll say, oh, so who is this woman who claims to be, a leader, knows everything about everything? No. So now I know how to deal with it differently. I think the most important thing is to have confidence that you are somebody, that that you belong here. I think that comes with experience. And that is the confidence that I want to pass on to the other women, because I know that a lot of them look to me for support. Like, a lot of times they'll say, Neela, we just want to talk to you about this, because we know that there are women who'll just say they want a picture with me because a lot of men will not harass them. I mean, not that that's a good thing, but I think everyone in every community, we need strong women leaders, especially when it comes to harassment, domestic violence, discrimination, bias against women, especially in my community. I feel our voices are muffled, they are not taken seriously. Even now, there are so many women whose voices have been silenced. Why? Because they're not important? They're not important as men? Or are you afraid that we are going to shake up the patriarchy in your organization? So, a lot of those, and this is today happening in America right now as we speak. So, I see now myself as I'm not afraid of those situations. I'm not afraid of being discriminated. I want to give my shoulder, a shoulder to another woman who is afraid. And again, I go back, Paula, to the fact that we must have strong Muslim women leaders in America, around the globe. I myself, I think I learned, I saw my grandmother, but one of my own icons was Benazir Bhutto. I looked at her and I said, oh my gosh, she's leading a Muslim majority country. It's a nuclear power. Look at her. And I always looked up to, yes, if she can do it, I can do it. And so when I was attacked here in America as the leader of, oh, you don't wear hijab and you can't be the leader of a Muslim women's organization. Well, why? Because where I come from, Muslims sometimes cover their hair and sometimes they don't, but they're in leadership. If they can lead a Muslim majority nation, Bangladesh, Pakistan, you're telling me I can't be a leader of a Muslim women's organization in America? Sorry, you don't have an argument. So those kinds of attacks even now come. I mean, that's a reality we as women are going to have to fight. And the more we shoulder each other and we lift each other up, I tell when I talk to women, I tell them, look, I hate to tell you, but there are very few men who will lift you up when you're down. There are men. My husband always, gives me this push. Okay, this person said this to you. Are you just going to sit there? So there are men. My father was there. My husband, he's always been there. My nephews, they're all, they're going to stand by me. But then there will be ones who will kick you down. But majority of the women that I've known, they will lend a hand. They will lift you up and they will stand by you if you're being attacked. And if we can all be that kind of a woman, we'll change things together.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that that's something that we need to remember is that sometimes men might not understand where we're coming from. Even if they want to, they can't always really understand the experience of a woman, a pregnant
Right.
woman, a mother, like anything,
Yes.
or maybe some kind of abuse that a woman has gone through. But we have to have confidence in our sisters and in women around us, and really have more faith in them, and also be people that can be the ones to be lending that support. So regardless of the person who comes to you or shares her story or maybe cries in front of you or shows that vulnerability, we have to immediately take up the charge and be the strong support for her.
Exactly. And Paula, you said something, very true. It sort of resonates with me. Over the past 20 years that I've been, a Muslim woman leader in America, and, dealing with the difficult issue of domestic violence, male patriarchy, it's still not, we haven't dismantled all of that. And we also have not been able to come out and say, look, my husband abused me. My husband, you know, mentally and physically abuses me. We haven't got there yet. But I am so happy to see that the younger generation of Muslim women that are sort of growing up in America, a lot of them are finding they will not tolerate abuse from their husbands or their family members, that they come out and they say something. Once upon a time, like, there was no woman who would say, they would secretly, confess and tell me, I don't want anyone to know. And these are career professionals who are being abused by
Mhm.
their husband or somebody else. And they would say, please don't tell anyone. And then I would say, okay, but you've got to confront it. This person's like a bully. But now, Paula, now that we have been talking about it, women are they're coming out of relationships like that stronger than they were and saying, I can do it too. And yes, it's okay to be a lonely divorced woman for a while, and I shouldn't be targeted for that, but I'm going to get my life back and I won't be so lonely. So a lot of these kinds of stories are coming out, and women in their 30s right now that we are supporting, they're saying we want to share our story. And I feel that's a success of us as women, that we have been able to give that lending hand, the shoulder, the leadership, and that role modeling that, you know what, it's okay. I can tell you, I've been bullied in school when I was little and growing up in England, and I talk about it every day, every time I do Anne Frank with my students. I recall the time that I grew up in England and I was a little girl being called Packy and I was beaten. And I tell them that this, what happened to me, that's why I will never let this happen to anyone else, whether it's a girl or a boy or a, you know, anybody, a woman. And I think it's so important for us to talk about it. And that's the key. You giving me this podium, more of our women should be given the opportunity to speak, let it all out. And it's okay to talk about abuse. It's okay to talk about bullying. There is no, you know, taboo anymore. I mean, what you see on TV is far worse than, you know, talking about domestic violence. Your husband beat you up.
Right. I want to switch just so that I make sure to have time to talk about the amazing work that you're doing in Pakistan. You're from Pakistan, you lived a while in England, then you came to the United States. But one thing that I'm really curious about is the work that you're doing, especially in rural Pakistan and empowering girls to get an education. And the question I have is, how can you bridge the gap? I mean, these girls, they might not have mentors, they might not have role models. Maybe they don't know another woman who knows how to read. How do you start to open girls' minds and make them start to believe in themselves?
Well, first of all, you know, I know you and I are on the same page. Education is the key. It is the key to empowering a woman. It is the key to opening up and enlightening that mind of theirs. And, you know, it's now been 6 years since we've been educating little girls in Pakistan. And along with that, of course, we haven't forgotten the boys. We've got the boys as well. But definitely when we started, we knew that this is just the beginning and things are not going to change overnight. But what delighted me, Paula, was that when I went into interior Sindh, that one of the reasons that me and my, you know, my sponsor, Dr. Hecht, when we went into Sindh, we went because a father sent us a video. And he was from the villages, and he said, you know, kind of Baji, and you do this in America, and you want to talk about girls' empowerment. All of our girls are, they're not being educated. And so when we looked at that and we said, if the fathers are saying this, wow, that is, you know, defying a myth and making it reality that everyone in Pakistan wants their kids educated. So when we went there, now, you know, it's been 5 years, a lot of girls say, oh, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a pilot. They are choosing careers, not I want to be, you know, in the house taking care of my kids, which is okay too. I did that. But they are choosing careers that they probably never ever dreamed of before, because they know that it's possible, and they know that there's somebody sitting out there. I kind of I, you know, they can associate with me. But then there is another American woman who leaves her luxury in America and comes to make sure that they get an equal opportunity. I can't tell you how that has changed the way girls and boys are thinking about themselves in these schools. They're talking empowerment, they're talking about careers, and they know that there's someone who cares for them, and that he will help them. So now we've got these young women who never got an opportunity, and they are, you know, they, thanks to Dr. Hecht and her sponsorship, one of them just got a certificate in education. So she's the master teacher. She speaks 4 languages so that she can teach all the teachers. But you know, her, if you listen to her, she says, this is what I want every girl to do, to be like me, like you empowered me. So I think it is such a chain that you help a girl, and you've helped a community, you've helped a couple of generations. It is in it so powerful in itself. And when we talk about like multiculturalism, the world is global now. And when last just before COVID, I was in the villages, and from the mosque, there are 5 times prayers. The mosque is there because Dr. Hecht gave them money to build, get the sound system, to build the mosque, to have that integrity and that pride in their own village. They told me that they are so indebted to all these American people that they said 5 times a day we pray for you all. And
Mm,
that is a huge thing. Not only did we empower and open up the minds of the girls and the boys in the schools, look at the goodwill we have built.
right,
That entire village, 500,000 people without light, without education, ever, are all of a sudden saying, we love these people in America because they care about us. They don't need to
right.
care about us.
That's a perfect segue before we have to wrap up, because one of the things that you and I really bond over is our belief in multi-faith efforts and having hard conversations between people of different backgrounds. And so this summit that we're doing today is the title of it is How to Find Your Power, Use Your Voice, and Change the World. And I'm curious, your own personal experiences, why are multi-faith efforts so important to you? How do they empower you? And how do you see that domino effect from it?
Well, I have to tell you that I grew up when I was little in Pakistan. I went to a Catholic school,
Mm,
and it was these nuns who I had to listen to. My parents would never have allowed me to say anything but yes, ma'am, to my teachers who were the nuns. I went to England. Um, couple of my first friends were Hindus and Jews. And, no matter what the politics was, and my father was a diplomat, he always told me that, look, this world is a global community. We are all people. We are all children of God. And it doesn't matter how you pray. You could pray through the mosque, through the synagogue or the church. You're praying. And you're all one. So I never want to hear you can make friends with anybody. My father was so enlightened that he actually encouraged me to meet people who didn't look like me. And I think that is so important for all of us to say, it's okay, get out of your comfort zone, meet a Jewish person, get to know what they celebrate, get to know Hindus, even though when I was growing up, Pakistan and that India, had gone to war 3 times. But my father always said, that doesn't mean that you can't be friends with Hindus.
mm,
And one of my first friends was a Jewish friend. He was from Israel, and we were both in England, and we didn't see any differently. We were all there in a very different setting, and we're all from different countries. We shared our culture. So I think if you educate people, and in that education, you add that kind of it's multiculturalism, then you are going to have a different generation of kids. And once I came to England, and I moved out of Pakistan, and globally curriculums have changed, and
right.
I am such an advocate of teaching a multicultural curriculum, including in adding, and Frank adding the book that I wrote with my Jewish and my Christian colleagues, talking about how beautiful it is for faiths to unite. Not to mention that as a Muslim, I pray for the Jews and for the Christians 5 times a day in my prayers. So why would I allow anyone to say anything hateful about them? And if we forget that, one, we are not being good Muslims, because 5 things that we have to believe in as Muslims are, our belief in Abrahamic prophets, and the books, Abrahamic books, and that we're all one. And something that I grew up, I think the difference between when I grew up as a Muslim and now is that I was taught to pick up the Quran, read and understand it. And I think that has now changed to, oh, what is this mullah saying about this? No. The beauty of the Quran, the first word in the Quran is Ikra, read it and understand it. So whenever someone told me, oh, you can't be friends with Jewish people, it's written in the Quran, I said, where? Show me. Oh, you mean there? I mean, there was a mullah who came and he said, oh, you can't play music. And this was Pakistan Day in Karachi. And I said, really? I can't play music that's patriotic Pakistani music? Can you show me where it says that in the Quran? It doesn't say anywhere. Even in the Prophet's life, there were percussion instruments and they would sing. So I said, if we can challenge that, then you know what? We disempower those ideas and we disempower the bullies, we disempower the Islamists, we disempower all these people that are trying to break the unity of the global faith community. We're all one. And it doesn't matter how you pray, as long as you are kind to each other, which is I know it's the message in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And we cannot forget that.
What I think is so beautiful as I heard you speak is that as I've grown up and been able to meet friends from different backgrounds, that's actually given me confidence. Meaning it gives me confidence knowing that you're there and that I can come to you. It gives me confidence with my Christian friends and I can go to them. That builds me up, that diversity, that global village. That helps me go about my life and tackle any challenges. And so I think that emphasis on multi-faith and multiculturalism, it's so empowering. It just builds us all up and creates this network of peace and also support. Well, I'm so grateful to you for joining us today. I guess
Thank
I'll
you,
just say
Paula.
thank